If you whisper her name after midnight on the banks of the Red River, the wind answers back. Sometimes it sounds like laughter, sometimes like a warning, but always like something alive. This is the story of the Bell Witch, the haunting that turned an ordinary Tennessee farm into a battlefield between the living and the dead. It's been called America's most famous ghost story. And unlike most, this one left witnesses. Prominent men, school teachers, preachers, even a future president, all claimed they heard the voice of the witch. The year was 1817. The place, Adams, Tennessee, then Red River Settlement. A quiet corner of the frontier where people believed hard work and faith could keep evil away. But for the Bell family, evil came anyway. John Bell was a farmer, respected and prosperous. His wife, Lucy, was known for her kindness, the sort of woman neighbors brought their sick children to see. They had 9 kids in a stretch of land that looked like heaven when the corn was high. But in the summer of 1817, John spotted something strange in the fields, a creature half dog, half rabbit, watching him with human eyes. He fired his gun. The beast vanished without a trace. That night, the knocking began. At first, it was gentle, like someone tapping on the outside walls. Then the sound moved from room to room, clawing and scratching as if trying to get in. The children woke screaming that rats were gnawing at their bedposts. When John checked, the wood was untouched. Night after night, the sounds grew bolder. Bedsheets were yanked away. Unseen hands slapped the children and pulled their hair. And then, the voice came. At first a whisper, then a raspy giggle. Soon, it could speak clearly, answer questions, sing hymns, and quote scripture better than the pastor himself. It called itself Kate Batts's spirit. Kate Batts was a neighbor, eccentric, loud, and feared by many. Rumor said she'd been cheated by John Bell in a land deal and swore she'd haunt him for it. After her death, the voice announced it had returned to settle accounts. The Bell Witch had a target, John himself. Witnesses heard her curse him night after night. When the family prayed, she mocked their words. When they sang, she sang louder. She knew everything they did, every thought before it was spoken. Neighbors came to help and left white-faced, saying the house was alive with voices. The haunting spilled beyond the farm. Travelers passing the Bell property reported stones pelting their wagons from nowhere. Horses refused to enter the road at night. Preachers called it the work of the devil. Locals called it proof of witchcraft. Word spread so fast it reached Andrew Jackson. Yes, that Andrew Jackson, the future president. He rode to the farm with a group of men determined to see for himself. Their wagon stalled a mile from the house, every horse frozen, hooves locked in the dirt. A female voice laughed from the dark, saying, "I'll see you tonight, General." Moments later, the wagon moved again as if released by an unseen hand. Jackson is said to have declared, "By the Eternal, I had rather face the British than the Bell Witch." Inside the house, the torment intensified. The spirit focused on John Bell Sr., driving him to collapse. Neighbors found his medicine vials scattered, contents soiled. On December 20, 1820, John Bell was found dead in his bed. A strange black liquid lay in a bottle on the floor. The voice announced, "I gave old Jack Bell a dose last night that fixed him." At his funeral, as the family wept, the witch laughed and sang a drinking song from the rafters. The Bell Witch had won. Or so it seemed. But the story didn't end there. In 1821, she told the family she'd return in 7 years. When she did, they heard her again, quieter now, curious, almost human. Then she promised to come back in 107 years, to the descendants of the Bells. And people still wait. They say the grave never really closed over the Bell Witch. It just learned how to travel. After John Bell's death, the family tried to return to normal life. Lucy Bell kept the farm running. The children grew older, married, moved away. But none of them forgot the voice that had haunted their walls. And for years afterward, travelers still heard laughter echoing from the empty fields. Sometimes the wind carried words. Sometimes the words carried names. Every once in a while, someone swore they heard their own. As the decades passed, the legend changed form. The ghost became a teacher's story, then a preacher's warning, then a line whispered by kids daring each other to walk the old road after dark. But every version kept one thing the same. The witch didn't die, she waited. In 1935, a man plowing near the original Bell property hit something solid. He uncovered a flat stone carved with initials. Underneath it, bones. Before he could finish digging, the wind picked up, hard enough to rip the hat from his head and scatter his tools across the field. He left the hole open. The next morning, the bones were gone. By the 20th century, the haunting had become a kind of tourism. People came to Adams, Tennessee, hoping for a glimpse of America's first documented ghost. They got more than they bargained for. The old cave beneath the Bell Farm, what locals call the Witch's Cave, became the focus of new stories. Visitors described whispers from the dark, pebbles tossed from nowhere, and a chill that moved like breath against their necks. One man said he heard a woman's voice whisper, "Come closer." When he leaned in, the lantern beside him shattered. The flame vanished, but the voice stayed, soft and cold, repeating the same word until he fled. Mine. Skeptics call it imagination. Scientists point to the cave's shape, how the wind funnels through narrow rock passages to make a moaning sound. But the recordings say otherwise. In 1977, a Nashville radio team visited the site for a Halloween broadcast. They brought microphones, a battery pack, and a priest. Halfway through the session, the audio spiked with static. Then a clear female voice, uninvited, cut through the white noise. "I was here before you were born." The tape aired once, then disappeared from archives. The engineer who kept a copy swore the voice wasn't on his master file when he packed up. He destroyed his copy a year later after it started playing back on its own. But not every encounter was violent. Some felt more like a haunting turned curious. A young woman visiting the site in the 1990s claimed she heard gentle humming near the cave wall, an old hymn. When she sang the next line, the unseen singer joined her, perfectly in tune, until she stopped shaking and started crying. She said it wasn't terror. It was recognition. Whatever the Bell Witch was, or is, seems to choose how she's remembered. A tormentor to some, a companion to others. The line between curse and conversation gets thinner every year. Historians have dug into records looking for proof. They found court papers confirming John Bell's death, tax documents, land transfers, even letters describing the haunting from neighbors who had no reason to lie. There's no solid evidence of fraud and no explanation for the voice that spoke from empty air. What they did find was darker, patterns of fear repeating through generations. Every time something terrible struck the town, fire, drought, illness, someone said, "She's back." And every time the old road filled with visitors hoping to see a ghost and locals praying they wouldn't. The Bell descendants still live in Tennessee. Most avoid interviews. One, speaking anonymously to a reporter, said that family gatherings sometimes include a ritual, an empty chair at the table, left untouched. When asked why, she answered, "Because she still shows up when she's not invited." She wouldn't elaborate, only that the family hears tapping on windows during storms and that children sometimes wake laughing at voices no one else hears. Maybe the witch is gone. Maybe she's become something else, an echo that feeds on belief, a story that refuses to die. But whatever name you give it, the pattern remains. An injustice, a death, a promise to return. Every haunting begins with unfinished business. And the Bell Witch, if she truly was Kate Batts' spirit, had plenty. The legend says she swore vengeance not just on John Bell, but on anyone who mocked her suffering. She didn't curse a man, she cursed a line. That might explain why she never stopped moving. Why the Red River still whispers when the air cools. And why people still hear laughter when there's nothing left to laugh at. They say every haunting is just history trying to speak. But the Bell Witch doesn't whisper about the past, she keeps rewriting it. Over the years, investigators, psychics, and skeptics have all come to Adams hoping to end the mystery. None have. EVP recordings fill with static that forms syllables, and thermal cameras catch shapes colder than shadow. One team claimed they saw a woman in pioneer clothing kneel beside the riverbank, touch the water, and vanish as if drawn beneath it. Another found small handprints pressed into the limestone of the cave wall, impossible to reach without crawling through rock. They say the prints were still warm. Locals stopped calling her a witch a long time ago. Now they just call her the voice. Because that's what remains when everything else fades. A sound that doesn't belong to one person, but to the land itself. Tour guides tell visitors not to provoke it. No shouting, no dares, no come out and show yourself. She doesn't need permission. She never did. Sometimes it's better to remember that not all echoes want answers. Modern folklore scholars point out something strange. The Bell Witch story mirrors older European tales of revenant women, spirits who appear when truth is buried with the body. In those stories, the dead return not to punish the living, but to make them listen. And that may be why the Bell Witch still lingers. Because no one ever asked what she wanted. They only asked her to stop. What she said most often, according to witnesses, was simple. I'm here. 2 words that collapse time, turn the past into now, the dead into noise. Maybe she wasn't the villain. Maybe she was the voice of everything the bells tried to silence. Guilt, debt, regret. And maybe that's what all curses really are. Not magic, but memory that refuses to die. Even now, the Red River winds past the old property, slow and red-brown, carrying pieces of silt that once held footprints, tears, and prayers. People fish there in daylight, but no one stays after dusk. When the fog crawls up the bank and the frogs go still, you can hear something walking just out of sight. Boots on gravel, a skirt brushing the reeds. The air feels electric, like a storm waiting for its cue. And if you speak her name, sometimes the wind breathes it back. In 2017, a full 2 centuries after the first knocking, descendants of the Bell family gathered at the cemetery for a documentary shoot. Cameras rolled, lights buzzed. A woman asked aloud, "Do you forgive us?" The audio spiked. A whisper came through the boom mic so clear the crew stopped breathing. "Do you?" They packed up early. No matter how you tell it, as history, horror, or folklore, the Bell Witch curse endures because it touches the oldest human fear. That what we do will follow us. That our voices outlive our bodies. And that somewhere in the silence we leave behind, someone or something is still listening. Maybe that's why her story thrives online now, in podcasts, documentaries, late-night TikToks filmed at the cave mouth. The technology changes, but the current running through it stays the same. The witch doesn't need candles anymore. She's found Wi-Fi. And still the questions remain, was she real? Was she revenge? Was she warning or witness? No one can prove she existed. But everyone who hears her story feels the same chill. That whisper of consequence, that sense that some debts never get paid in full. Maybe she never wanted forgiveness. Maybe she just wanted to be remembered. So this Halloween, if you find yourself driving through Tennessee and the fog rolls thick across the highway, turn off your radio. Listen. If you hear a woman humming in the static, don't answer. If she laughs, don't look back. Just nod once to the dark and keep moving. Because some ghosts don't haunt houses, they haunt names. And some stories never die, they just wait for someone brave enough to retell them.